Welcome all to the Functionised podcast. To the left of me, your right, my left, is our new co-host. Beauty Brains Brunch Shantae has decided to step away to focus more on her peak performance coaching. And to my right, needs no introduction whatsoever, IFBB Pro, Jason Arntz. And before we get going here, I need to switch hats from last week. From T2, Antonio Tarver Jr., podcast just released today. Check it out. This podcast will be released next Friday. And we are switching hats here to the I Prevail supplements, Jason's supplement line here. Yes, I told everybody I thought of that in the shower this morning, and that's very true. Thanks for hanging out, Jason.
Anytime. Good thoughts come in the last minute.
Also, remember, any podcast that you tune into, in the show notes will be a link for BOGO Fit Advantage, the new Delta 8 gummy by Functionised. Listen to it and get two. Can't go wrong with that.
And that's a good product.
It is good stuff. All right, Jason.
Not for Xander.
Not yet. No. So, Jason, thanks for being here, hanging out on a Friday.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning.
Okay.
How did you get involved into the sport of bodybuilding?
Right. So I don't know if well, I can't say that, but I was an athlete, growing up. I was always competing in something, whether it was gymnastics, starting off, that transitioned into wrestling and football, and that wrestling and football pretty much dominated the majority of my youth. High school was predominantly football, but then I took to weight training, and weight training, of course, was to help make me a better athlete. But I started liking the look. Maybe there was too much of a sense of vanity, that came into it. But also, it was a time where, training to me became personal. It was my time. It was my therapy time. I didn't have a lot of support, going into adolescent life and early adulthood. But I took to this and I developed well and I progressed well. So I kind of started liking, or looking into competitions. Mm-hmm. So I looked into competitions in my teenage years and started following the trends. And this was in the late 80s. I graduated high school in 1990. So at that time, Diamond Gym in New Jersey was the hot spot. If you were to be a bodybuilder, this is where you're going to learn. This is where you're going to progress. So I kind of ventured out and made my trips out there back when I was 15, 16 years old, even in high school. Mm-hmm. So I would go to school all day, go to football all night, and then after football, I'd go home and get a ride with a couple of my friends, and we'd go to Diamond Gym and train, and we did this every day.
So back up a little bit. So you're kind of getting going, figuring your way out of here. Right. And I remember, at least like myself, fourth grade, I didn't know anything that I'm doing. Right. It was the same way for many years. Like, let me just keep on doing push-ups until it burns so bad. It feels really cool. And now I can't move. I can't explain it.
Right.
Where did you start to develop and start to understand a little, at least of the 101s of bodybuilding and weight training?
So for me, everything always has to make sense. Whatever I'm doing, there has to be a sense of logic to it. And there has to be a sense of science behind it, and there has to be a why. So the why is what motivated me to do it. I knew that was easy. And the fact that I just love competing. The science behind it, that was interesting to me. Because at that time, there wasn't much available. It wasn't like you can go on your phone like you can nowadays. Like you had to go out and sought after some of this information to find it and obtain it and then utilize it. So that's why I reached out to Diamond Gym, because this is where all the pros trained, and I learned a little bit about the body. And then I started tapping into nutrition, supplements, the kinesiology side of it, and then also the pharmaceutical side of it in my later years. How does this work? How does this work better? And then you apply that to what you're doing, and you have your, you tweak it. You have your ups and downs and your trial and errors, and find out what works, what doesn't work, and what works best under certain circumstances when the body's stressed, when the body's trying to recover, what works best when you're dieting. But one thing I learned is, during my contest prep time, That's when I started applying different types of, approaches to my diet. And what was great about that, and supplementation, what was great about that is that, when you're at a body fat percentage that's relatively low, anywhere between 5 and 6%, where your skin is thin, when you have onion type skin, you can see, clearly, and pretty quickly, the effects certain foods, certain supplements, and certain enhancements, what they will do to you, right? And then you could apply what you learn there into later on and into your off seasons, at your pre-competitions. But that always intrigued. I was always intrigued by that, like learning more about the body, learning more about nutrition, learning more about how your body utilizes protein and carbohydrates, how things are synthesized, body fat, consuming fat, difference between trans fats and non-trans fats. And
you became a student of the game, it sounds like.
Well, you have to learn the game first, and you're always. I'm still a student. We're all. If you think you know it all, then you got it all wrong. Like I'm still learning. You could always learn, and the body's an intricate thing. So if you think you could just apply one technique to anybody's body and expect the same results, it's not that easy.
You and I, if we do the same thing, you're trying to tell me that we're going to get different results?
We're going to get different results. Yeah. Unless it's something basic. If it's something basic, but when you're really when you're at a high level, when you're at the high, like, I was competing at the highest level. So with that, you would want to tweak things, and you're looking for a specific desired effect. And to do that, it takes a lot of work, a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error. And ultimately, fear has to leave, because you can't, there's times where you almost freeze up, like, I'm afraid to do this because what if it doesn't work? But you have to take those chances. You have to, hey, look, I got to try this, see if it works. If it works, great. Even if it works great the first time, doesn't mean your body's going to respond well to it the second time. Excuse me. So adapting that and changing it with how your body changes from year to year, from show to show, that's something that's you can't teach. It's like teaching trial law by reading a book. You don't know until you go out there and do it. So I've done it, and I've competed. I couldn't even tell you how many times, but I've perfected this art to the point where even if things aren't going perfectly, if you hit a wall, you got to know what direction to go in. And if it doesn't go right there, you got to know how to do it. And some people panic, and some people jump off the rails, and they go into an immediate different mode. You have to learn to relax and take things as they come, and slowly apply what you've learned and progress.
You brought up fear.
Yeah.
How much fear was in the sport?
Oh, sure. And plenty.
How did you overcome or even use it for fuel for yourself?
So fear was our, fear, insecurity, self-esteem issues, self-consciousness. These were our pre-workouts. This is what drove us. And I'm sure it's what drives everybody nowadays, and whatever you're doing. We all have our insecurities, and we all deal with them certain ways. But if you could deal with them in a positive way and make yourself better, you're going to be a powerful guy, at least within yourself, right? With fears, you're afraid you're not going to win. You're afraid if you do this, you're not going to have the same approach. You're afraid you're not going to live up to anybody else's standards. You're afraid of trying something because, hey, what's going good right now? I'm afraid to take this other step, but you can. Also, you have that fear of competition, and sometimes there's a fear of success. I know guys that you see them, like, man, this guy is going to blow the roof off in the last minute. Like, they just sabotage. Like, dude, what happened?
You notice that a lot of people.
Oh my God, a lot of people. It happens very often. Because sometimes there's people that they'd rather be the guy who's known for he could have been. He could have been.
Could have been the guy.
Right. They'd rather have that. And if people say that forever, than the guy that took a shot and either lost, say he lost, or is afraid to take the shot and win. So sometimes people, they become emotionally, psychologically paralyzed from that fear. And you learn a lot. I could tell you one thing is when you're training for a show and you're on a calorie restricted diet and the suffering kicks in to the point where, it takes you 15 minutes just to get out of your car because there's no energy. You can't move. to go forward, to continue to move in that direction, it's all heart.
What is your driving passion? You're sitting in the car. You got to get into the grocery store.
Right.
You realize it's 15 minutes. I'm still sitting here.
Right.
Come on, motivate. You can do this.
Right. Well,
what kept you going?
So for that point, at that point, it's like trying to get your car to move with no gas in it. You really don't have the energy.
You don't have the gas in you.
Right. So you have to muster the willpower just to get up and do it. And then, on top of going grocery shopping, come home and cook it and eat and get your meals in and do this. And it's just that's what separates guys from becoming champions and guys that don't. It's that will to survive, that will to fight, that will to challenge yourself and to never quit.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between the fastest guy in the world and the second fastest guy in the world could be this much. Right? This much.
I think that's what a lot of people fail to understand is when you get to certain levels. I mean, when you're just starting out, you're in high school, college coming up, it's not as fine as when you get to that elite level where you're separated by hundredths of a second there. Yeah. You're separated by one judge looking at you saying, the way that's it. That's the one thing. Yep. You guys agree?
Right. And on top of that, you have it at different levels. So there's people that are smaller scaled that for some reason can't find that will, or even if they do find that will and they still take second place. Look, being second place at 22, 23, 24 years old, that was okay because I knew I wasn't going to be where I needed to be or where I was going to be. However, when you're looking to get at that end result, if you could apply that work ethic, if you could apply that willpower and the survival mechanism that we all have in us, you will go far. But one thing I could tell you is my point from before is when you're in contest mode and you don't have the energy, and you're breaking down and you're on the treadmill or you're doing the stepper or you're training and you got to get through this work, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn when you're in those dark places alone, where you feel like you don't have support and you don't have the energy to complete, but you can't quit. You can't quit. You learn a lot about yourself. And I was able to learn a lot about myself through all my competitive years in bodybuilding. And it taught me to do what I do now, to continue to do what I do now, to be a good person, to be a good father, to be a good business owner, to approach things, with integrity, and in a good manner. But you certainly learn a lot, during those grueling moments. And if you can apply that, you can do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the biggest obstacle that you've actually had to overcome throughout the years of training?
So, okay. All right. I went through a rough patch. So, this was probably 2001 to 2003. I gone through a divorce, my ex-wife, going through some legal issues that I brought upon myself, so dealing with the courts, dealing with potentially going to jail, dealing with having to file bankruptcy. And I did it on my own. I went through all of it on my own. And at that time, that was my biggest obstacle.
How old were you at this time?
I was early 30s.
Okay.
Early 30s.
So it's like 20s are over and you're supposed to be an adult, but
So I matured early. I matured early in a sense that I've been on my own since I was young, and I've been independent since I was young. But I was, I didn't start messing around until later on in life because I had so much on me at a young age. It wasn't like I could afford to sit back and,
right.
I don't drink, I don't party. That was never my style. But I got involved with some other stuff that had some ramifications, but I had to do what I had to do at the time, and to earn a living and to provide for myself.
So you went through that? How did you get through it personally, mentally, where you finally said, did it, I'm stronger now?
Right. So the worst part of that is my divorce stretched out for almost 3 years. We were only married for 3 years. We had no kids. It was just ridiculous,
Mhm.
you know. And the sad thing is, the courts allow it. You know, we had an agreement. She didn't want to settle on it. As soon as we came to an agreement, she'd find something else to fight with. It was just so there wasn't light at the end of the tunnel for me. So that was my darkest time. That's when I started messing around and doing stuff that wasn't healthy for myself, and getting involved with people that I shouldn't have been getting involved with, and especially at a time when I was already on probation.
Right.
So not a good time for me. But this one day we're in court. It was actually 9/11/2003. The judge just got tired of it. Finally, he got tired of her antics, right? And he said, "Listen, I don't care whatever you don't settle on." He said, "I'm divorcing you today." He said, "This is over today. You could fight over this, and this, right?"
Thank you.
Right. You could fight over this, and this afterwards. As soon as I heard that, boom, I stepped out and I just saw. But believe it or not, at the time, like I was devoting my life to bodybuilding and competing, and that's what, even though I was in a dark spot, that's what kept me on track, even in that dark time, was training and looking forward to a show and looking to get this over with so I could rebuild my life, you know, and revamp my life and clean up my debt and clean up my credit and start over.
So your passion literally became cathartic and something your go-to.
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as I was over, I just stepped to the side and just plowed forward and fought for, you know, everything along the way.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Let's talk training recovery here.
Sure.
That probably the most important part of training whatsoever. Everybody keeps wanting to pound, and not realizing that I'm not getting much stronger. Why is that?
Right.
What do you typically do for yourself and recommend for recovering from extremely hard days?
So I could recommend till I'm blue in the face, and I say this all the time on my videos and on my Instagram videos. You have to eat right. At the end of the day, you have to eat right,
mm-hmm.
you know, and not just when you feel like it.
And that's so subjective too, isn't it? What is eating right?
Well, that we can go down that.
We'll be here for another semester.
3 days. Right. We can go down that road, you know. Okay, so when I say eating right, I'm just saying a good, well-balanced diet, you
mm-hmm.
know, clean diet, no fried foods, no dairy, no crap, you know, just clean nutrients, right? But a higher protein source, a moderate carbohydrate source, and a low fat source. Let's just assume this is just your healthy eating. So on top of eating good, making sure you're getting your protein requirements on, and you have to be sleeping good. You know, you're not gonna, you know, no days off. You know, come on. You know?
Exactly.
I know it's you know,
it sounds cool.
It's a shtick. You know, it sounds great, right? But not plausible,
right?
Or probable. So you got to rest. On top of that, you could apply supplementation. So I'm a huge believer in amino acids, essential amino acids. I'm a huge believer in helping and aiding to better quality sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because of the sport I'm in, I'm not against enhancements for recovery. That's a different angle.
I say for anybody really over certain ages,
of course,
it should almost be a staple.
It should be a staple. It probably is nowadays. It's
becoming more and more prevalent and accepted. Yes.
But also, you know, your recovery has to suit your training. You know, nowadays, I don't know if you want to talk about the bodybuilding angle, but you know, it's more like take more drugs and don't overtrain. I don't get it. You know, that it doesn't.
It seems to be more the way things are going. Is guys will supplement with whatever,
right? Or over supplement with whatever,
and not do anything.
And not do anything for it. They're, hey, this is getting me bigger. I guess I don't have to train hard. You know, that's not how it works. You know, your steroid receptor sites in your muscles work better when they're activated. You know, so if you stimulate your body and you add that to it, you don't even need a lot of large amounts. You know, you will respond better. But you have to train hard. So your recovery has to suit your training. So depending on what you're doing, look, if it's later in the week or you're going 2 weeks and you can't get out of bed, you know, you're depressed, you're tired, chances are you're overtrained.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're eating good and you're sleeping good and you're taking supplements and you're using any type of hormonal enhancements and you're training properly, you're gonna recover.
When it comes to, you say the hormonal enhancements on that, it's still a quagmire out there, especially for young individuals who are just starting to get into it.
Right.
You're reading every old school guy, hey, I've done this is what I've done, and a lot of them are totally wrong.
Yeah.
They're going to hurt people long term, especially.
Yeah.
Is there any type of source that you would recommend for somebody to at least start learning about it, or should they just go find a physician to give them?
Well, the thing is, it depends on what you're looking to do.
Let's stick with bodybuilding, for instance.
So
it's the easy go-to.
Right.
A lot of high school kids, especially.
Yeah. So there's no physician that's going to tell you what to take for bodybuilding, just because there's no studies.
Right. The studies
Nobody studied taking trenbolone with testosterone and anavar and anadrol and winstrol with
Right.
growth hormone and thyroid enhancement. There's no studies that somebody's put all these things together. The best thing you could do is listen to somebody who's done it,
Mhm.
who's still alive, okay,
Right.
who's done it properly, who doesn't have ailment. When I did things, and that's what I'm talking about, how I got into it. Like, I would never just do something. I had to know the whys of everything. So at one time, I could have probably told you the pathology report of any substance I put in my body,
Mhm.
just because I know, look, this is what I'm doing. Probably not the healthiest thing in the world, but this is where I'm looking to go with this. And I want to have kids, and I want to be healthy, and I want to be around for my kids. So if I'm going to do this, what's the best way to do it? And what's the best way to come off of it? And
Mhm.
what's the best way to stay off of it? And what's the best way to start it again? So there were cycles of these times that we would do this, and I would learn through trial and error, like we just talked about before, what works best. And you can tell, like, if you're overdoing something, or if you're doing something and you're getting estrogen buildup,
Mhm.
okay, a lot of guys will just take an anti-estrogen and block that out. But then the acne starts coming out, and they'll take something for that. The reality is, you're taking something your body can't handle. If you're having these seriously adverse side effects, that's a first indication that you might be doing too much.
Yes.
But some people, they just look to put a Band-Aid on that instead of addressing it.
It's very medical world. You get the sniffles, I'll give you something for that. And you get that, and I'll give you something for that. But they never actually get the root cause.
Just like the health industry.
Yes.
And just like boxers or football players. These guys saying, I want to walk when I'm older.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to keep taking cortisone? Or am I going to keep taking benzos? Am I keep taking painkillers to get on the field? Bodybuilding is no different. It's really no different.
Mm-mm.
I took stuff to train because I had inflammation build up and had injuries. But you have to know what's the best way to do this where you have longevity. A flash in the pan is a flash in the pan. And for me, I wanted to retire at 40 and have a good life. Unfortunately, you can't say that for a lot of people. And unfortunately, you can't say that everybody has an end game. Right? Endgame. Who doesn't love Endgame?
Great movie.
But you need an end game. And that doesn't mean you can just throw as much shit against the wall as possible and then just get out.
Right.
You want to do this systematically and with a routine or a plan. How to do this healthy.
Mm-hmm.
How to take your chances. Back away. Get your health back in check. Do it again. Get your health back in check. There's guys now I hear they don't even come off. They don't even do PCT.
Unfortunately, I've known some 20-year-olds that overdose, never came off.
They don't even know what you mentioned.
They get testosterone less than him when he was born.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not good.
They don't even know some of the drugs you could take to help you come off or to get your system back up. I mean, I used to have protocols that I would do, and that's how I design my products now, based upon the protocols I used to do. And look, I'm 50 years old now, but I have two daughters that are 10 and 13, great athletes. I'm healthy as could be. I just had an echocardiogram, an EKG.
Beautiful.
Stress test my blood work is perfect. Testosterone level still a little excessively high, little bit. Okay. But I'm okay with that,
But I was also say high according to which lab.
Right.
Because as you know, the labs, they've got different reference ranges, and none of them go for the anti-aging reference range, which is going to be higher in general.
Well, I'm above my range. However, at this time, it's not causing any adverse effects. And I don't I'm on just PCT, just TRT. But I do nothing compared to what I used to. And even the stuff I used to do, I mean, I was scared shitless. Excuse me.
He's heard plenty in the lab, unfortunately,
I was scared shitless getting my first, EKG and echocardiogram.
You wonder what's going to show, right?
So he calls me in and he's like, it's a funny story. So you need to come in. We got your results. And this was like 6 years ago. I just recently had one a few months ago, but this was going back 6 years. Because I was in my 40s and early 40s, and I just wanted to get checked, So he's like, look, your heart's working at 50% of its max. Like, shit. I said, really? I said, what does that mean? Oh, it's perfect. Because if it was working at 100%, that means that your heart's overworking to pump the blood through your body. I said, dude,
you call me in, doc, like this, and you do that.
So he's like, okay, and this is your left ventricle, and here's your right ventricle, and this ventricle's going this way, and this one's. So what fucking way are they supposed to go? There's nothing going in the right. I said, dude, you gotta work on your delivery. I said, because your bedside manner is not, it's off-putting. So he goes, no, he's like, you actually have a perfectly healthy heart. I said, really? Yeah. So I said, no enlargement. I was at least expect, because you hear athletes and guys that take, anabolics, they get enlargement. And that's not uncommon at all. It's probably more uncommon that I don't have it than it is for somebody who would have it.
Right.
He's like, no. He's like, you have no enlargement. I said, no stress fractures. I said, you hear these stories of these guys that have these silent heart attacks, I could swear I've had 3 or 4 of them. Right. He's like, no. He's like, you have a great. So, in light of, there's been a lot of passings this past year, bodybuilders, big name bodybuilders and stuff. And with things that are relevant, viruses that are relevant now, and thickening diseases and clotting diseases, and people taking anabolics, not probably not the best mix, because when you're on anabolics, you get a higher red blood cell count, which means that your hemoglobin level's higher, your iron count, and your hematocrit level's higher, which is the thickening of the blood. And you add like a virus or something that could enrich or thicken your blood. Also,
a little too much.
You got a clotting problem. So I was worried, so donated some blood, flushed it out. But I went to have another EKG, echo, stress test, and again, perfect, So
excellent.
Yeah,
keep going.
Knock on wood. And
that's kind of the difference, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong here. Difference between gym science.
Right.
I could call it gym science, my science, and bro science, but science, and bro science. So you go to the Globo gyms, and all the guys are touting the same stuff. Take this with no real research or understanding. When I first met you, I was just floored. You're like biggest biohacker I've ever met.
Right.
Just everything you do, everything you put in you, you're writing it down, you're taking notes, you're cross-referencing, you're figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
Do you feel that a lot of the guys coming up nowadays follow the same way?
No, I don't think anybody cares. No, and the reality is you could take that outlook to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares to take care of their heart until they have a heart attack.
True.
Nobody cares to clean up diet until they get sick. Nobody cares to prevent, cancer until they find out they have cancer.
That's out of mind. I don't have it, so therefore I'm good, right?
Yeah. I could mention some other stuff. I'm not going to. But, people don't realize, hey, I can't even maintain an erection because I've shut down my natural testosterone levels until it happened, So I didn't want to deal with that. I needed to know this is what I'm doing.
You really did have an end game.
Oh, yeah.
Inside.
Without a doubt.
Like Thanos. He knew what he was doing ahead of time.
Right. I'm the chosen one. I am. But there's too many uncertainties. There's too many uncertainties as bodybuilding progresses and all sports have progress, they evolve also. Just look how training has evolved with football, track and field, soccer, and any sport, baseball. There's a different science to it nowadays than there was back then. The difference with those sports is that those science theories are applied by experts.
Mm-hmm.
There's no experts that are designing what illegal drugs to take for enhancements. You're not going to get that. There's no studies on that. So you can't just throw it all against the window because you don't know if. And somebody mentioned to me once, it was a different podcast I did. They said, the IFBB, they should start drug testing and do. And that's not the answer. It's not the answer because it's a business. Ultimately, this is a business, and people pay to see this. And people want to do this. And there are natural shows out there. There's plenty of natural shows out there.
They're great at tapering at the right time. Yes.
Right. Nobody watches them. Right.
Right. No, not one bit.
Right. There's not many people in attendance. They're not big draws. However, and how do you test for some of this stuff? Then you have to talk about what guys would do to beat the tests. And that's unhealthier, most of the time more than the stuff you're actually taking. So what they could do, or what any athlete should do if they're going to take these risks is get your blood work done. Donate blood, make sure it's not thin, make sure your hematocrit level is not past a certain amount, make sure your hemoglobin, your iron count isn't. Those are the real dangers. Hormones in general, they're hormones. It's not like you're going to overdose on an opiate or some stimulant.
Right. Take too much testosterone, your body will spike it. You'll feel like crap for a little while, and you'll be right.
And most of the time, your body will come back. Your body wants to come back. If you shut things down for too long, then you got a longer problem. But it's not like another drug, like a recreational drug that you could just overdose on.
Right.
So the bad effects come from the clotting and the thickening of the blood. So if you could at least attempt or make it a good attempt to monitoring that or being mindful of that, then you're starting in a good direction.
A lot of young athletes coming up rely on supplements as opposed to knowing that supplement literally means like in addition to what you're not getting.
Right.
But for the young kids coming up, what might you suggest that they could start with to help them from a physical performance?
So, how young?
Let's say starting with high school. Really starting young there.
Right. So, obviously, if they're eating a good, like we said, a good, well-balanced diet, if they have their nutrition in check, I'm not against oversupplementation also in the sense of, amino acids, they rule the world, whether they're free form or essential or non-essential or whatever, or everything that's done and any type of stimulus through your body is all done through different types of amino acids, right? Protein spikes, this and that. So a good solid recovery, essential amino acid, and what I mean by essential, is amino acids that you only get from food. You want to go heavier with a leucine base. That's the prominent branch chain amino acid. It's the most important one. That's the one that really triggers mTOR, the mTOR response. mTOR is when your body starts synthesizing all different proteins together, but you need an abundance of leucine to really utilize all the other good proteins that are in your blood. So if you have a high dose of leucine, you're really off to a good start.
Like 5-7 grams ish.
5 is good depending on your body weight. 3 to 5 is fine, but I have 5 in my amino impact and in my rehab also. An intra workout, I swear by. It's probably the most untalked about supplement on the market. People, they'll drink Gatorades during the game or sugar drinks or this and that. These are all high glycemic index carbohydrates, which you want to avoid, especially during activity. They get utilized and burned right away, but you're looking for something that'll restore glycogen, that'll give you sustained energy.
I can testify right here. Using before races, now I've actually for longer sessions been using them in the middle just to sip on, and oh my gosh, what a night and day difference.
Right. So I have that product Rehab, which is loaded with essential and branch chain amino acids, extra glutamine also, which is good for gut health. Good for recovery, but it's a high dose of leucine, has all 9 of the essential amino acids. But what I did, what makes my products a little more unique, is that I changed the signature. I have a signature amino acid profile. So your normal 9 chain, branch chain amino acids are a 3 chain. It's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And then you have your other 6 essential amino acids. They form a chain and make a complete protein. If one of those amino acids are missing, you're not going to get a complete protein. Your body isn't going to utilize, I'm not going to say any of it, but if it's not a complete protein, the studies I've seen suggest you only absorb only 25% of it, where you'll get almost a 90% absorption rate of a complete protein. That's why for vegans, vegetable protein and stuff like that, for the majority of these vegetables, they're not giving you a complete protein. So you need to take something that is complete that'll help complete that chain while it's in your bloodstream so you could utilize it better for recovery, rebuilding, regeneration, basic metabolic functions to be healthy. We need protein to be healthy. So that's key. So good. And I added carb 10, which is a slow digesting, low glycemic index carbohydrate. It's from pea starch. You don't get an insulin spike. You don't get a hydrochloric acid release in your stomach. So you won't have anything denatured. When your body consumes protein or amino acids, sometimes if they're hard to digest, your body has to release hydrochloric acid. This is where you get like beyond the science of things. You could see a product that has all non-essential amino acids, but how are they put together?
Right.
What's the milligram dosage? So I added a different milligram dosage to my formula, so you're getting an abundance of the better muscle building recovery essential amino acids than the ones that just say are there to help complete the chain. But aside from that, when it comes to recovery in the intra workout, you want to absorb and utilize these amino acids. So I use an instantized type of amino acid form. So it's lighter on your stomach. I use the pea starch carbohydrate as opposed to a maltodextrin or a cyclic dextrin or a clustered dextrin or any other dextrins, which are all corn products.
Right. A lot of those products like that so we've seen cornstarches.
Yes. So we all remember what our parents, told us, make sure you chew your corn, right? You know that. You got to chew your corn, otherwise, it doesn't come out right. And even though this is a powdered form, they're still hard crystallized, particles. It's like you take a diamond, you could shatter the diamond.
Still going to be
still got rock hard little particles there. So you will get a hydrochloric acid release from the clustered dextrin or cyclic dextrin or waxy maize, which is why some people, not everybody, but some people experience bloating when they take in those types of carbohydrates. With the pea starch, you don't get that. It goes through your gut real quick release, and gets utilized pretty much instantly as glycogen. But on top of that, your body's utilizing that, and it spares the protein breakdown for energy. So now the amino acids that you're drinking during your workout, right, they're going to get utilized to help your muscles recover.
You're shaking your head no. You drink the same stuff.
Yeah, you love the stuff. It's in your formula. It used to be in your formula when you were a kid. No, we're kidding. But now the protein is getting utilized more efficiently because the carbohydrates aren't giving that hydrochloric acid release. When your body releases the hydrochloric acid, it denatures everything in your stomach. It's like overcooking meat. You overcook meat, you're not going to get the nutrient value.
Right.
Hydrochloric acid, it burns everything in your stomach to help break it down. So these amino acids, while they're in your stomach, if the hydrochloric acid hits them, they're going to denature them. So it's the source also.
There's another supplement there, creatine, for instance. That's one that's introduced usually at a very young age.
Yeah.
I once had an athletic trainer trying to convince me you don't need creatine, just eat more burgers.
Right.
Because there's 5 grams supposedly in a hamburger. So went with that for a little while and then went back to the creatine, of course. So when it comes between vegetables and beef, what do you gravitate towards more when you're just talking about a complete diet? Because of the nutrients. That's why I brought up the creatine in the first place there.
So creatine's a great supplement. It's I'm going to sound cliche for saying this. It's the most studied supplement that's on the market. Yeah. No harm. It's not a steroid at all.
Right.
Yeah, you hear it's like not at all. It's something that comes from red meat, more or less, or other foods, other protein foods. But it's ATP. It's energy. So I'm all for it. I mean, I'm a beef eater. I don't eat as much beef as I used to when I was competing. But your body can get creatine from all different sources of food. But I'm a higher protein guy. I'm not against meats. And depending on your system, what you could break down if you have a hard time digesting some red meats or tougher foods, then you could switch over to fishes or egg whites or whole eggs, stuff that's, but.
And some people take a protease supplement to go with the meat and it breaks it right down. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are digestive enzymes and that'll help your body digest. But even there are people that are taking extra protein in abundance because they're trying to recover and they're trying to put on muscle and they're trying to do this.
Think about that one. You know how much protein, I mean, to you, you know down to the T how much protein you need.
Right.
I'm sure you're done writing it down every single day, but you just know after all the years, this is how much I'm going to eat.
I still weigh my meals. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Or neurotic.
How much meat would you say is enough?
So
Get-
there's how
Yeah.
there's how much is enough and how much do people really eat.
Right.
So you have other factors that come into play. You have guys that could just have tremendous appetites. They just want to eat more,
Mhm.
and they're burning. They're burning more because they're training heavy. They're doing this. They're active. They work all day. So to put on muscle, at least 1 to 1.5 grams. I used to do 2
Mhm.
grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So if you're 200 pounds with 8% body fat, you could say you have 16 pounds of body fat on you. So you're talking about, 174 grams of protein for 1 pound. You could double that for 2. So
definitely you should know what you're eating and not just eat that and then chug a shake as well. Right. And then.
Well, that's overdoing it also. But if there is one food, if you're looking to stay in shape, if there is one food you can eat more of and not worry about getting fat, it is protein.
Mm-hmm.
Your body has a much harder time converting protein into fat, much easier time converting fat into fat. And believe it or not, your body will convert carbohydrates to fat faster than fat.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
People just don't get that.
So fat is interesting. So fat needs to sit and break down into your liver for 72 hours before it's either utilized or stored as body fat. Carbohydrates don't.
Right.
They go through your liver, get broken down in your bloodstream, and if they're not burnt off within an hour, they get stored as body fat. Some will get retained as glycogen, your lower glycemic index carbohydrates. The rest of them, the fast-acting ones, if they're not utilized or burned right away, they get stored as body fat. That's instantaneous.
So why not just eat, like burgers all day? And grass-fed, of course.
Grass-fed. well, you could. Theoretically, you could. However, you still do need glycogen. You still do need carbohydrates. That's why I'm not against the keto diet, and I'm not for it either. But there is a step off, more or less. So your body needs the average body needs 75 grams to 100 grams of carbohydrates a day just for basic metabolic functions.
Mm-hmm.
To think, to concentrate, to go to the bathroom, for your system to work, to digest foods. Your body needs that. However, if you're on a keto diet or eating just proteins and fats, your body is not getting the 75 to 100 grams of carbohydrates a day. So there's a process called gluconeogenesis, which occurs in your body. So your body will take, and most likely it does come from protein. I'm a little foggy on this. It's been a while since I talked about it, but I believe it's from pyruvate. Mm-hmm. Your body breaks it down into pyruvate, and the pyruvate gets converted into sugar, into carbohydrates. So you could think you're going keto all you want. Your body's going to get that sugar one way or another.
Yes, it is.
However, once that process occurs, now you're burning off some of the protein that could be used for recovery. And now some of those excess calories that you're taking, like the fats, will get stored. So there is a fine line. So that's why I always recommend doing a low carbohydrate diet. 100 grams a day, 150 grams a day, which will prevent the gluconeogenesis from occurring. And now you can utilize all the protein and still take in a decent amount of, a normal amount of fat. So your body could either burn fat to get into a conditioned body type or a body look that you're looking for. Once you reduce your body fat to that level, then you can increase your fats because now you need something extra burn.
Right.
You put yourself into a deficit where you want to burn and get in shape, right? But once you get there, the burning doesn't stop. Your body's still burning. So now you need to take something in to compensate for the way your metabolism is going. So it's all hit or miss.
When not training, what typically are some healthy activities where individuals who are actually in competition season might be able to do, not to overtrain, but to kind of stay the course?
So stretching is huge, and unfortunately I applied that more to my later years than I did when I was younger.
You get that back and forth too. I mean, you stretch the fat should allow the muscle to grow, but at the same time you're elongating the muscle too much and taking away the strength. Which way do you want to go?
Well, now it's different because I'm not training to put on muscle anymore. So I have 2 days a week where I do more functional type stuff. and I have 4 days where I'm doing weight training.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a day I don't do anything. But even on the day I do nothing, now I move around and stretch a little bit, where as opposed to when I was training for bodybuilding competition, I didn't want to burn any excess calories, so I didn't want to do anything.
Right.
And that's a mindset a lot of people have. And, whether it's healthy or not, who's to say? But for the most part, if you want to keep longevity and keep training the way you're training, if you're training hard, stretching the muscle, applying different types of tension to that muscle, keeping it pliable, I would never argue with anybody doing that.
What type of stretching did you typically do, like between static, dynamic?
So now I do a little bit of both.
Okay.
And to be honest, years ago, I didn't really even know the difference between the two. You just stretched.
Right.
Now that's what I'm talking about, the science.
Yes.
So nowadays, we didn't have that back then, as opposed to nowadays, like they could literally just teach you and look at you running through a computer and tell you what to do to perfect and add an extra tenth of a second, to your time to make your time.
When muscle's tight, we can see it in your biomechanics. Know that. Open that up and done.
So there's so many new breakthroughs now that athletes have that didn't have back then. But for me, it was more. I wanted to maintain my flexibility because I always wanted to look. I was an athlete. I always wanted to maintain my athleticism. I always wanted to be able to move. And I've always been in some dark corners where you never know when something's going to go down. You just want to make sure you want to make sure you can be okay. You're going to be okay in the morning. So I was always, just working on more static stretching. And also, I wanted to, when I said to myself when I retired, when I give this up, I want to get down to like my light heavyweight body weight, which is under 200 pounds, 198. And I want to be able to run. I want to be able to run again, and that's what I do now.
You're able to run again.
Oh yeah, I run well. I sprint, I jog, I do it a couple days a week. I cycle, I do cardio 4 or 5 days a week. But I feel good. But when it comes to training nowadays, what guys could do is dynamic stretching. I'd probably recommend more before you start weight training, just to move things around and go into your movements. And then I would apply the static stretching, holding things for an extended period of time afterwards. Once the blood's in there, that'll help stretch out the fascia.
So you mean everybody? Jason reads all the articles, the actual peer-reviewed studies, and applies them.
Right. Well, I've done them too. But I did them later on in my years. And I started working with a guy that did neuromuscular massage, which was probably one thing that really helped me through my career.
Yeah.
And that was intense.
I'm sure.
But that's the stuff you got to do if you're gonna beat your body up the way I used to beat myself up.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Mr. Xander man here, man of many words. You got any questions for Mr. Jason here?
Yes. What do you feel like when you're in a competition?
So, despite what it looks like, on the videos or on TV or in the magazines or whatever you view it on, see, you feel good because your adrenaline's going, but you feel horrible inside because you're dehydrated, you're depleted, and you're competing under these extreme stresses of your body where you don't have any water in your system. Your electrolytes are completely off balance. Who knows where your blood levels are at? And then you add in the stress of the competition, right? And then you're competing on a stage under these lights, they're as hot as the sun, right? I mean, you feel like you're on the equator, while you're posing, and you have to do it with a smile on your face and make it look like it's effortless. So when you see the pictures of the guys up there posing and in the pose downs and they're smiling and getting it on, doing this, I enjoyed it because I love competing and I didn't mind the sacrifice and I didn't mind the pain. But you feel pretty bad. You feel pretty horrible. It's like you could see a guy who scores a touchdown. He scores a touchdown, but he gets hit 3 or 4 times on the way in. But his adrenaline's going so much that he's spiking the ball and he's doing his dance, and then he's limping over to the sideline. Where the next day when he gets out of bed in the morning, he's got to crawl out. He's got to crawl out of bed just to get out. But training, you should always feel good. But the day of the competition, you want to be as relaxed as possible. You want to stretch. You want to have a good mindset about you. But the conditions are tough. Like they're definitely tough conditions to compete under. But it's just part of the game. That's what you got to do. It's like playing in the rain. It sucks, but we got to do it, right?
Yes, indeedy.
Yes, I've done it before.
Any other questions for him?
No?
Nada? Favorite
That's a good question.
superhero?
Mine?
What's
Yep.
your favorite superhero?
Ooh. So I do love Marvel. I do love Marvel, but I'm a Batman.
Yeah?
Batman guy at heart. Yeah. I love Batman's got to be my favorite.
You train with or without music?
Definitely with.
You have a favorite mix?
It varies, but it's more of your heavy rock, rap type, gangster,
Mhm.
lose your mind kind of stuff. I always train with a hat on. I used to be a Scully, a bandana, or a hat, and I always have my dog tags on when I train.
You got the back off look and don't go near me.
Yeah, I'm in my zone.
Stuff's happening.
and I like the headphones that cover your ears,
Mhm.
so I don't have to hear anybody else. But definitely music.
I know we're running short on time here,
Yeah.
but how can our listeners find you and how can they contact you if they want to ask you any questions?
So I'm on Instagram. I underscore Prevail Sups.
Mhm.
On
And
Instagram.
all these will be tagged, of course, for you.
Thank you. The website, my email address is on the website. But you could drop me an email or slide into one of the DMs or whatever they do nowadays. But I'm pretty easily accessible.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Jason, thank you as
Yes,
always
sir.
for being here.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate you.
Xander.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's another Functionized podcast episode. Be here next week. We'll be back. As always, live Functionized.